if you do have a book inside you, I just want to say that you do not have to wait until your kids go to college to write it.
Welcome back to another empowering episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast, where we celebrate the incredible journeys of women who navigate the delicate dance between motherhood, entrepreneurship, and personal passions. I'm your host, Angela Mashuli, and today I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with the remarkable Mary Adkins. Mary is not just a prolific writer with a fascinating background in the corporate world, she's also a dedicated coach helping aspiring novel and memoir writers find their voices. In this episode, we delve into Mary's inspiring transition from the boardroom to the world of words, explore the intricacies of her novels, and uncover the strategies she employs to craft compelling stories while juggling the demands of motherhood. But that's not all. Mary generously shares her insights on developing a system to write novels, especially when you have young children in the mix. How can moms create a framework to accomplish writing a book or tackle any big task for that matter? Stick around because Mary breaks it down for us. We'll also uncover the secrets behind Mary's creative process, how she nurtures her creativity to bring her stories to life, and of course, the all-important question, how does she incorporate self-care into her busy life to achieve her business and writing goals? Plus, stay tuned as we explore the intriguing connection between understanding your Enneagram type and accomplishing your writing goals. It's a conversation filled with wisdom, inspiration, and practical advice for all mompreneurs out there who are striving to find their balance. So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot, and join us as we embark on this journey of discovery with the incredible Mary Adkins. Let's dive in. Thanks for joining me today, Mary. It's so great to have you on the podcast, and I can't wait to dive in on how you transitioned from corporate to becoming a writer and helping others write their own novels. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to talk.
Yeah, I love sharing stories like yours because it makes the possibility to somebody more attainable. And I think it's just so fascinating to learn behind the highlight reels how somebody was able to accomplish that transition and, blaze a new path for themselves. So that's great. So why don't you give us a little intro and what you're doing and your background on what you were doing first and what you're doing now?
Sure. So I had always loved writing as a kid and as a young adult, but I decided to go to law school after I graduated from college. I think the reason a lot of people go to law school for the same reason, which was like it was a straightforward career path. It was so that gave me a lot of comfort. It was like, here's the next steps. The next 3 years of your life are planned out for you. And I had always been like a strong student. And so that had appeal too. I would get to keep being a student. It was like, I think the reason probably a lot of people go to graduate school, not even just law school. So I did it for that reason. And I loved it. I loved law school. But as soon as I was out and got my first job as a lawyer, it was very clear to me once I was in the workforce that being a lawyer was not what I wanted to do with my life. My desire to write, to be an author. And at the time I didn't realize it because I was 27, but really I think what I was also feeling was that I wanted to be my own boss. Like I think I'd always been really entrepreneurial. I was like the kid of the cousins who would write a play and direct it and make everyone be in it. And I started a nonprofit when I was in high school. I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. And so I think even at the time, it wasn't just wanting to write, it was also wanting to be in the lead of my own schedule, time, work life. So I left my law job after only 7 months. I was not even there a year. And my intention was to write. I wanted to be an author. I didn't know what kind of books I necessarily would write, if I would write novels or memoirs, or a memoir or something else altogether, collections of essays. I kind of had ideas for all of the above, but I left my law job, and my priority became having time to write. So I needed to have a job that would give me time to write. And that ended up being tutoring. So I would tutor in the evenings and I would write during the day. And I did this for years. I mean, I did this for 7 years before I had written a book that a literary agent wanted to represent and that a publisher wanted to buy. So it took me about 7 years to get my first book deal. And at that point, everything pretty much shifted for me at that point, because writing stopped being something that I made time for on the side while I paid my bills through other means. And it became the way in which I was primarily paying my bills. I, at that point, also had realized how much I loved teaching, because I had been tutoring during all those years when I was trying to have time to write. And I loved it. I loved teaching people things. And so I had this moment. I remember I had just had a baby and I was pushing my son around in the stroller, and my first book was coming out in a couple of months, and I had already sold my second book and written most of it. And I had figured out a lot about how to write a book. I mean, I had really hobbled all of that together over the years through writing classes and just online research and talking to people. And I thought, wow, I have a lot I could teach to myself 7 years ago. I've learned so much that would have been really helpful for me to know 7 years ago. And I love teaching. I've now been teaching for 7 years too, and I love it. What if I marry these two things, my writing and publishing knowledge and how much I enjoy teaching? And I started doing that. And I didn't want to do it, to go back to this idea of that entrepreneurial spirit / streak. I didn't want to do it for someone else. That was very clear to me. It wasn't oh, let me find someone to hire me to teach a 3-week course. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have complete creative control over the thing I was creating. I wanted to be able to say, no, I'm going to teach you everything I know in 6 months. And here's when we're going to meet, and here's how you're going to learn it, and here's how you're going to do it. And so I started, I started the idea for my business while I would push my son in a stroller while he napped. And I would Google, I remember Googling how to create an online course and just clicking on one of the top hits and watching some free webinar on my phone while I pushed the stroller, and just started that process of figuring out, how do I create an online business to teach people to do what I now do successfully, but that I didn't know how to do 7 years ago. And then the rest is kind of history. So that was my son just turned 5. So that was 4.5 years ago. And now I run a program called the Book Incubator, and I work with people who are working on novels or memoirs. So fiction or nonfiction, but full length narratives, full books, to write their book, to revise it, and then to seek publication, whatever that looks like for them. It could look like what it did for me, which was finding a literary agent and then a publisher. So that my novels have been published by HarperCollins. So in the kind of publishing industry, we would call that traditionally published, but increasingly people are going other routes and independently publishing, or also called self-publishing. So for some people it might look like that. But either way, I try to get them from A to Z, basically, over the course of 12 months. And that's what I'm doing now. And I have a 5-year-old.
I love that. What's so inspiring to me about that is that I recently heard a story about somebody who had put off their publishing dreams for 20 years. And so often we just kind of stuff down those ambitions and goals, and and really, like, our identity and how we see ourselves can really get in the way. Did
Yeah.
you have to kind of struggle with that, or do you see your students kind of struggling with that?
Yes, both, both.
Mm-hmm.
I've struggled with it and I see people struggling with it every
Mm-hmm.
day. I mean, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with someone right now who like she just finished her book and she's revising it, but she says all the time, she's like, I have wanted to write this for 30 years. 30 years.
I have goosebumps. Like, that is incredible
Yes. It's
that
the I
you're able to
know.
help people bring that to fruition. I mean,
Yeah, it really is. It's such a privilege and such a joy. I mean, it's so
hmm
exciting to like hear her
hmm
say like I just finished this draft and I've
hmm
wanted to write this book for 30 years. I'm also like, yes, like I get to be here and be a part of
hmm
this. But yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, so to go back to that part of my story where I quit law to write books,
Yeah. hmm
I, I ultimately became a novelist. Now I just wrote a memoir and
hmm
it's going to come out in a few months. So I now
hmm
also will be a memoirist, but the three
hmm
books that I have published have been novels.
hmm
I didn't actually believe that I was capable of writing fiction for years because I had taken one creative writing class in college and it
hmm
was a fiction writing class and it totally destroyed my spirit, my confidence. I got B minuses. The instructor did not like the way I wrote, and I left it truly thinking, oh, I guess I just can't write fiction. I must just not be
hmm
good at fiction. And so when I quit my job, my law job to write, what I actually thought I would end up doing is writing
hmm
essays because and like
hmm
essay collections because not because I wanted to write those more, but because I truly thought that was the only thing I could write. I did not think I was capable of writing fiction. The only reason I ended up writing my first novel
hmm
is because I was pitching an essay collection to literary agents. And one of them wrote back and said, I can't sell this essay collection, but because it feels very 90s. This was 2010. He's like, this feels very 90s. He said,
Little did he know.
but right, what was coming back?
We'd all be clamoring for
Yeah,
nostalgia a couple
right.
of decades later.
Exactly. Right. We'd all be wearing like, the same jeans. Like we should
Right.
have kept those jeans. But he said, he's like, do you have he's like, I like the way you write. Do you have a novel? And the answer was absolutely no. I did not have a novel, but I did have a novel idea. And so I had the wherewithal to write back and say, like, well, here's an idea that I was toying with for a novel. And I kind of wrote a
hmm
paragraph synopsis of it, the working title that I had. And he wrote back and said, oh, that sounds great. Write that novel and then send it to me.
hmm
And that was it. That was my permission slip because until that exchange, I
hmm
truly I don't know that I ever would have written that novel idea that I
hmm
really didn't think I was capable of it. But
hmm
because I had a literary agent kind of quote unquote waiting for it, he wasn't actually waiting for it, but he had said he would
hmm
read it if I wrote it. And
hmm
that was the only warm lead I had gotten, like at this point.
hmm
I mean, I
hmm
was getting lots of no's from other literary agents. So I was like, well, that's the direction I go.
hmm
You follow
hmm
the breadcrumbs.
I love that.
And because of that exchange, I became a novelist. Like,
hmm
like it's funny to me now that
hmm
I still have imposter syndrome. Sometimes I'm still like, am
hmm
I? No, but I'm just faking everyone out, including myself. Like, I don't actually know how to do this, but it's just so ingrained that
Yeah.
that I don't know why, but I feel like for
hmm
many of us it is ingrained.
hmm hmm No, I love that story too, in that, well, I had a very similar experience with a creative writing class in college,
Oh,
but that
really?
was not surprising because I'm not like a creative writer. And I went the legal route too because I
Yeah.
write like in that style. And, and something that I know personally, like legal writing is very different from writing a
Yeah.
novel. I mean, that requires a whole other skill set. So kudos to you for making that shift. And um, but I love that you also pursued this goal of yours, this hunch, this calling, whatever you want to call it, without knowing A to Z how it was going to turn out or necessarily how you would approach it or how successful you would be or what it all looked like. You just
Yeah.
had a faith in something, yourself, the universe, or both, or
Yeah.
you somehow trusted yourself to figure it out. And I
Yeah.
think that that's a really important lesson that many of us don't like hone in. We let that stop us, the overwhelm of like whatever it is that we truly want to do. So I think that that's just such an important story to share. So I love it that you're coaching aspiring writers and you figured this out all on your own while you have a child. And I mean, that's just so when you started out with your teaching, did you already have an established audience or did you create that audience? You
Yeah.
did.
I remember I don't even remember who. I took so many online courses, like the free, I would do
Hmm.
the free ones and the
Hmm.
just and I think I paid for one that was like $1,200 or something. And I was like, I can't
Hmm.
believe I'm spending this much money. And then I learned how from one of them how to do Facebook ads. And
Hmm.
I started running Facebook ads, spending like a couple dollars a day
Hmm.
to a free webinar. So I learned this
Hmm.
method, of like, okay, I'm going to run the Facebook ads to the free webinar. And then at the free webinar, I'm going to pitch my course.
Hmm.
And I had an audience of zero. I had an audience of zero. I did not have an email list. I did not have a MailChimp account. I had nothing. And I didn't have a website. Um, I don't honestly didn't even know if I had a website when I started because I don't think I did. I think I had created a Teachable account. So it was like I would
Hmm.
just had the course on Teachable.
Hmm.
And then I ran these ads to like a Teachable landing page to sign up for this
Hmm.
free webinar.
Hmm.
Anyway, I finagled all this together, but it was Facebook ads and I didn't know how those
Hmm.
worked. To this
Hmm.
day, I like Facebook ads. I don't run them anymore. They're the bane of my existence. They were terrible,
Hmm.
but they
Hmm.
did give me they did start to build me an audience and it felt miraculous. I remember sitting at the beach with my family and I had just hit, publish on these Facebook ads.
Hmm.
And I would watch like people sign up for my little free webinar. And it was like, it's working. Are these real people? These are real people. And they're coming from Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, it felt like magic. Like I'm
Uh-huh.
finding people who actually want to hear me teach, and I was so
Hmm.
nervous
Hmm.
at that first webinar, just like as
Hmm.
people coming in, I'm like, these are real people. Yeah.
Hmm. I love that. I mean, that's awesome because again, people go, "Oh, it's too overwhelming. I have to learn this whole other skill set to be able to get this goal that I want to get out into the world that I don't even know how it's going to work and how it's going to transpire." You know,
Yeah.
it's just obstacle after obstacle that can be overcome if you just find that thing within yourself, educate yourself, give
Yeah.
yourself that knowledge that you can assess that you need, or find a mentor or somebody. But just keep seeking the solutions.
Yeah, and I think that now that I think about it, it was a lot like writing a book. Like I think having written a book was very helpful because
Hmm.
I like when I write a novel, I don't try to outline the whole thing. I don't try to like know how it's going to end when I'm starting. It's like I want to make sure I have the premise and like kind of a place to go in the writing and like an idea of kind of what is the big question that the story asks. But like I know it's going to go places that I don't expect, and that's fine. I just got to get into it. And I think I had that same approach with business. So it was like I just had to learn like how to start getting people to sign up for a thing where I'm going to teach them how to write something. Right. And it's like, let me just start there. And then like, once I had that, then it was like, okay, people are signing up. So now let me actually outline the teaching I'm going to do in that free hour. Okay. So that now let me like, once they're signing up for my course, like I actually had, because I had been kind of working on this for years in my brain, I very much knew exactly what I wanted to teach them once they got in the course. But I remember that I hadn't made it all pretty yet. So it was like, okay, well, the first 3 weeks look great, but I don't have to do weeks 4, 5, and 6 until they're in week 2 and 3. So like, I can wait on that. Like, you don't have to do everything at one time, you know? I was building it out as they were going through it. And then in my whole revision curriculum, I didn't come up with how to revise the book until I had actually taught a bunch of people how to write a book. And they were like, we want to learn how to revise a book. So I was like, okay, now we have a revision course, sign up for it. And I built it out as they went through it. So like, I never could have done, I guess this is obvious, but I think it's like what you're saying, if people feel overwhelmed by the prospect, you don't do all of it at once. Like you can build something out like in interaction with your clients, you know, like you get their feedback and respond to that in the building of it.
That perspective is such a gift. Honestly, I know this in the doing of things, but to hear that from somebody else who has done it is so valuable, because we think we have to have it all figured out all of the time, and you can't even start until you have it all figured out. And that's so not. Do it messy.
Yeah.
Just get started, because you don't want to be that person that's waited 20, 30 years, and time can be that way. It can just slip through your fingers. So whether somebody's looking to become a novelist or start a course or do whatever, you know, I think there's so much value in just that perspective, because you didn't have it figured out, and you took this approach that you already had through lessons learned as a writer, that you didn't need to have it all figured out. I just think that that's so beautiful. And it's so true. So let's talk about how you came up with this system that you write, because as a mom, you know, we have all of these limitations on our time and our resources, and just like our overall goals, whether we have children or not, we can just get caught up in those limitations. So uh, did you find a system where you could, you know, incrementally kind of chip away at your goal and stay on track and have a finished product?
Yes. And that is what I ended up teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So when I quit my law job, like I said, I was 27 and got this job tutoring at night. I would tutor at night. And then for most of the day, like I would tutor for 3 or 4 hours every night, which I could never do now. Sounds so exhausting. But then I would write during the day. But what this meant is, in retrospect, you know, it's like as a parent, you look back on your pre-parent time and you see it so differently. I mean, the luxury of time that I had, I just had hours and hours a day. It was like, I'm like, what was I doing? I don't, but a lot of it, I was writing, rewriting, revising, crossing out, like I luxuriated in it in a way. I didn't even realize I was doing that, but like I had all the time in the world. Well, then I had my son, and the night that I had my son, my second novel sold on a proposal, meaning I had to write, like I had a book contract, but I hadn't written it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to write it with a newborn.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 180, right? Like completely different experience. It was like, okay, not only do I not have 8 hours a day now where I can just sort of write it, I haven't slept. Like I was nursing. I was like feeding every 3 hours or 2 hours. Don't even remember now, but it was a sort of like, okay, I'm going to have to get like savvy. Like I'm going to have to get efficient. I'm going to have to get smart about how I'm going to do this, where I'm going to do this, when I'm going to do it. And it ended up being that I hired my friend who I trusted, because I now had a deadline to write this book. And I was like terrified of leaving my, newborn. He's like 3 or 4 weeks old with anybody at all.
Sure. Yeah.
But my really good friend was a nanny, and she had like a gap in her nanny work. And so that was just like such a gift. Like that worked out so well. And so I remember hiring her for 4 hours a day for like 6 weeks. And I'm like, I'm going to get this done in 4 hours a day in 6 weeks. Like I have no choice. That's when I'm going to get it done, because I have a deadline. And like, I remember thinking like, okay, maybe I can do it at night after he's fallen asleep, but like, I'm not going to rely on that, because I don't know how tired I'm going to be. And I need to be able to have some time off. So I had to get really, just like concrete about how I was going to get it done. And that's when I ended up developing a whole system for doing it that worked for me in this like very high pressure, emotionally draining situation. And that's what I teach now. So basically it involves, so I ended up handwriting. I did not handwrite my first novel, but I did handwrite this one, my second one. And I've handwritten my books since, because it freed me creatively in a way that the computer didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I handwrote it. And so when I realized I was going to have to handwrite it, because that's how I was managing to actually make words, I realized, well, like I need to figure out how many notebooks I'm going to need to fill to make a novel. So then I figured, okay, well, with the rate that the size I write, kind of way that I'm writing, it's 4 notebooks. So then once I realized I was going to fill 4 notebooks, I had this insight that like, okay, so the 3-act structure is a really powerful way of structuring a story. It's like tried and true. I love the 3-act structure. I realized, oh, I can like assign kind of like a story milestone to each notebook, so that my story will track the 3-act structure. So like in notebook 1, if I'm writing toward my main character, like having this problem that becomes unsolvable, then I will be tracking the 3-act structure. So I created these story goals for the 4 notebooks. And then I moved through it that way, and it worked like it incredibly. I think handwriting really helped. And I do encourage people I work with now to try to handwrite, because there's something really powerful about not being able to delete, right? That's like, it just kind of tends to push you forward and keep you moving in a way that people can really struggle with when they have the option to just, highlight and click delete. And so by handwriting like this, I finished it in 6 weeks. I mean, obviously I went back to revise, like everybody has to revise. I had to revise, but I finished a solid draft in 6 weeks, and in like probably about 2 hours a day, because I didn't, I wasn't writing all 4 of those hours.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, at the time I also I think my goal for that project was a page count goal. I tried to write 10 pages a day because I was handwriting. But these days when I work with people, we talk about all different kinds of goals that they can set. And I know, you said you're also interested in Enneagram talk. I think that Enneagram is really helpful in helping people to figure out it. And if you don't know what the Enneagram is,
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it's like a personality assessment and rubric that that separates people into 9 categories based on like your primary motivation, what's primarily driving you in life to what motivates you. And so I think it's really helpful to help people figure out what kind of writing goal is best for them, because it's all about motivation. I now use that. Now at the time, I don't think I knew what the Enneagram was yet at the time. So I didn't know my Enneagram number. I wasn't thinking about that, but I used page goal. Since I was handwriting and that was working for me, I would say I'm going to write 10 pages a day. And if I wrote those 10 pages, it was like, I got my gold star. And that actually worked really well for me for that book.
I love that. And so in addition to having those goals, like how did the perfectionism kind of figure in, and how does that work too? Because I think we can often get, it sounds like handwriting was a good way to kind of overcome that, but even in the revision process too, how do you overcome that like self-editing process getting out of hand?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. And I think it's interesting because I think in a weird way, having the book deal, or maybe not a weird way, maybe it's totally expected, but having the book deal before I had written the book was very helpful because it was like, okay, this is gonna happen whether you do a good job or not. So like you have a contract, you have to fulfill your job. So do your best, but like you just sitting here obsessing over this word and not getting it done is not an option. So like you just kind of have to, you just kind of have to do it. And I think it almost like a tough love, except it's not love. It was a contract. But like, I think that sort of, and maybe this is just like trite, but like that idea of treating it like it's a work project, a job, I find really helpful, because if you're doing a job for work, like you can be perfectionistic to an extent, but not really. Like at some point you can't let it stop you, because you have a job to do. You're literally like, this is your responsibility. You are being paid to accomplish X. And so you just do the best you can. And that's the best you can do. And I think that's actually a very healthy attitude to bring toward creativity as well, because we're not all going to write the great American novel. We're not all going to be Shakespeare, but we don't have to be. Like, there's something beautiful about just accepting that, like, you're going to write a pretty, best case scenario, you might just write a pretty good story that people enjoy. And like, it may not be the best thing anyone's ever written, or even the best thing you'll ever write. And like, what if that's fine? What if that's just totally fine? That is just like, this is a pretty good story. I enjoyed reading it. You enjoyed writing it. And like, that's enough.
You've got like all of these hidden little gems.
Thanks.
We're just opening them up one little gift at a time. Yeah, I just like, yes, 100%. I mean, we have this kind of like, achievement oriented society, especially in the US. And it's kind of like all or nothing, if it's not the great American novel, I'm not going to even try.
Yes. Yes.
Like, yes. I mean, thank you for saying all of that, because we all need to hear it on so many different levels. Because yeah, what if you're just writing the story that one person needs to hear, or who knows what else it will lead to? Had you not submitted that essay pitch, it wouldn't have led you to your first novel, and you just don't know where things are going to lead. And it's so important to just get it out there.
Yes. And it's like the name of your podcast, I just realized, right? It's like,
Yeah.
what is good enough? And like, just being easier on ourselves. And like, it's so hard. Like, it really is.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and the funny thing is, it's kind of like the easier you are on yourself, it just takes off. without you trying to control it and kind of make it this thing that you think everybody wants to hear and see.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happens all on its own, and we don't need to kind of control it and be perfectionistic about it, and just being yourself and doing your best is enough. you know
Yeah. And
so
it's funny too, because sometimes I'll say to people, like when it comes to that perfectionistic tendency around
mhm,
creating and writing, and like
mhm,
it's like, well, what if I embarrass myself, or like, what if it's not, amazing and I want it to be amazing?
mhm,
I'll just point out to them that we so rarely will look at someone else's creative work, like a book. We pick up a
mhm,
book,
mhm.
and even if we don't like the book, like, I mean, at least I am still like, wow, good for them for writing it. Like, I'm not like, why did
Yeah.
they bother? Like, we're not, this was a waste of your time, author.
Right.
No, it's like, no, like, good for that. Like, I still admire them for writing it, even if
Yeah.
I didn't like it, even if I don't
Mhm,
finish it. Like, oh, it
mhm,
must just not be my taste, but like, good,
mhm.
good on you. Like, you did
Right.
something, like, I have a
Right.
massive amount of respect for that.
Mhm.
And so I think
100%.
a lot of times when we think like, oh, I might embarrass myself, like really, you're the only person we're really, I think, really worried about embarrassing ourselves in front of is ourselves, because other people,
Mhm,
they don't judge us in the same way. Like, even if we don't write what is their taste, probably they're
mhm,
still going to be full of respect
mhm,
that you even did something as big as
mhm.
writing a book.
Right.
It's like, yeah, because most of us really have a lot of admiration for that. I certainly do, especially having
Right.
done it. Like, I have admiration for anyone who, it's a big undertaking and it's something to be proud of.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So you talked a little bit there. I was going to ask you, how is it in this process when you have a deadline and you kind of have the pressure of doing the thing, whether it's perfect or not, to nurture your creativity and kind of get out of your own way and get out of your head? How do you nurture your creativity when you're doing this?
So lately, for me, it's looked like getting up really early.
Hmm.
Um, like, and writing before my kid wakes up, because
Mm-hmm.
I think, and it was summer, and this was the first summer where my kid was old enough that he was not in daycare. It was like
Mm-hmm.
it was like a summer between, like school, which meant
Right.
it was chaos. Like, I don't know how parents do this all the time and have jobs.
There is a
So
recovery period.
yeah, like, I'm just now coming off of it. We started school 2 weeks ago. So like that was very hard, like, to have any
Mm-hmm.
kind of, to just nurture my own creative spirit. And so I wasn't for a while, and a couple months into the summer I was like, like, feeling very fried.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And my therapist said, because sometimes you forget that there are things like, early morning hours. My therapist is like, what if you woke up early?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I guess I could do that. I forgot that was an option. So
Isn't that
I
amazing?
right. Like, you
Yeah.
just forget that you have
We just
control
like
over your
get
schedule,
like
and you're an
this
adult.
blinders. We just get stuck in our patterns and we think
Yes.
it's all it is and how it's forever going to be. you know?
Yes, exactly. And so I, as soon as she said it, it was like, oh, because I remember her saying, like, where can you carve out time for creativity? Basically asking me this question in different contexts. And I was giving her all these excuses, like, well, it can't be this because I have to run my business in the mornings. I teach in the afternoons. Like, I have to take off time to eat some lunch. Like, I have to pick up my kid at 3 from gymnastics camp, or I'm with him all day. Like, I'm taking him to swim lessons. And she was like, what about early mornings? And it was like, huh. And then the next morning, got up at 5. And like, yeah, a little bit hard to get up at 5, but honestly, it wasn't that hard, because it was like, the whole point was it was going to be me time. It was quiet. It was still dark. I made
Mm-hmm.
coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, oh my gosh, my whole life, like, just changed for the better once I reintroduced that. I mean, I hadn't done that in years, but anyway, long-winded answer. But it's the early mornings, or it has been. It's now that he's in school again, I think I feel like I have a little more free time in the day where it can be like, oh, I can like carve out a little bit of quiet time at lunch to be creative or elsewhere. But mornings are, there's nothing really like an early morning, because the whole world is still quiet, and that energy is so good for creative thinking.
Another great tip for sure. So is the way in which you nurture your creativity also how you care for yourself, or do you also find time to do that too? Because as moms, we so often put ourselves last. It's just, I mean, it's not even somewhere in the middle. We're dead last.
Yeah, we're dead last. Yeah, no, I make time to exercise because that matters to me. So like running or doing yoga tend to be my things, but that, and then creativity. And then I actually literally just in the last 2 days saw someone's Instagram reel that kind of blew my mind. And so I'm going to take it to heart, which it was by like a stylist, but a stylist for regular women, not like a stylist for celebrities. And in this Instagram reel, she was saying like, all those nice clothes in your closet that you just like, you love, you bought them because you love them, but you save them for like one day because you think they're supposed to be for special occasions. And she's like, that day's not coming. Like how many weddings do you go to in a year? How many award ceremonies are you being invited to if you're not a celebrity? Like this is your life now. So wear what you love now, even if you're just going to the grocery store, because when else is that dress going to get worn? And I don't know, that blew my mind because it was like, like that nice dress that I bought. And by nice, I don't mean like formal gown, but I mean just like a really pretty dress that I splurged on, because I'm like well, no, that's the kind of thing you only wear when you go to brunch with girlfriends. Well, I never go to brunch with girlfriends because I don't make time for that either. So like I might as well wear the dress I bought to drop off my kid and go to Target.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I had a stylist on the podcast talking about.
Did? Cool.
Yes. I was fascinated by what she had to say. And she said the same thing, how what you wear affects your mindset. It affects what you earn, how you perceive yourself, mind blown. It's so true.
Yeah.
And again, it's just like the early morning hours. We just kind of, I think we have to incorporate so much routine, especially as mom with kids, that we just kind of just lose that, mindset. Well, what if I did this? Or what if I did that? We're just kind of, on the treadmill doing our thing. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I want to go back and listen to that episode because
she's wonderful. I've worked with her actually. She's like helped me redo my whole wardrobe, and yeah, she's amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
And it reminds me that my sister had her kids before I had any kids. And so she was ahead of me. And I remember her saying something to me when I was like very pregnant before I had given birth. And I didn't understand it at the time. And now it makes so much sense to me. She said, like, no matter what, like when he comes, when he is born, she's like, shower and dry your hair every day. She's like, dry. And she was like, dry your hair. I was like, why is she telling me to dry my hair? Like, who cares if I dry my hair or not? And like, I think it was so valuable because, and I didn't do it all the time, but now I see what she was going for, because before I had my son, like there would be a lot of days when I didn't dry my hair, but I would like take care of myself in other ways. You know, it was like, it wasn't a problem prioritizing me to an extent. But then after, like, even something like drying my hair could feel like, well, I don't have time or energy for that. Like, I need to spend all my time or energy devoted to this new little creature. And it sounds weird to call it a creature, but you know, like this new little person. And so they're like, committing to something like that is like, could be this powerful assertion of like, no, I will, my hair will get done because that matters. I mean, like, even if it's just 10 minutes, like it matters that I like how my hair looks, you know, like it's like making a statement.
No, definitely. We can lose ourselves in parenthood. And, you know, when they're 16, like my daughter is, and I'm teaching her how to drive, you will thank yourself.
Terrifying.
Because, you know, you don't have to go on this mission to find yourself, which I work with women sometimes because they just lost themselves in motherhood. And now they have all these goals for, you know, business or whatnot. And so, yeah, I think those things are so important. And I love that we're opening our mind on, you know, all the different ways that we can take care of ourselves. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to even take a lot of time, but just prioritizing yourself and realizing that you can't serve others before you serve yourself. You know, you just can't keep serving from an empty cup, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, if you don't have that in mind, you'll learn. But oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever. I feel like you have so many hidden gems, but I know we're running short on time. But I would love to hear about you know, if you had one message that you want listeners to take away from our conversation, you know, what would that be?
Okay, so it's going to be about writing a book because that's what I do and that's what I work with people on. So this is like going to be specifically directed to anyone who has a book inside them. And I find that people know if that's them or not. So if you do have a book inside you, I just want to say that you do not have to wait until your kids go to college to write it, because I work with people all the time who are moms, who have jobs, and who write their book, and they do it without upending their life. They do it without taking time off work or like making their family hate them. There's the story that I really love is a woman who has two daughters, and like reading stories to her daughters every night is what made her like really excited to write this middle grade novel. So it's a novel, but for children, for grade school children. But she didn't know when she was going to write it. And she's a doctor, and she ended up writing it in between seeing patients just on the notes app of her phone. And she wrote the entire novel that way. And like, it's just so heartwarming to hear, like, I think stories like that, because it's completely possible, like, to write it in these little pockets. Like it is possible. You just sometimes have to be a little bit creative, and like see your time in a new way. And it's really cool how I think it can, once you kind of commit to doing it, you find these pockets where previously they just seemed like you had nothing available. So that's what I want to leave them with. It is possible.
I love that. And that also reminds me too, in a time when we have a proliferation of information, we can Google and YouTube and all of these other things. I think it would be really important for you to talk about the importance of finding a group or a coach or somebody to help you achieve that goal so they aren't waiting, because I think so many people think that they can do it on their own. They're fine. They can figure it out. So what are the benefits of joining a group like yours to complete that goal?
Yeah, I think honestly, like exactly what you're saying, so much of what I work with people on is knowing what they don't need to do. Like do I need to do this and this? I'm like, no, like
Right.
it's so much around the coaching is not like, do this, do this, do this. It's like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Just focus on this. Like it's helping people streamline because you're right with all the information. Like the problem probably isn't that you can't find enough information to know how to do something. It's knowing how to sort through it to know what to prioritize and what to do when. Just because we can only focus on one thing at a time, right? Like it's like what we were talking about at the beginning. Like you can't be thinking about the end of your book while you're thinking about the beginning of your book. Like your brain does not going to do those two things at the same time. So like it's more like someone to illuminate the next step. Like what is the next step? Let's get there. Then let's get to the next one. And let's get to the next one. And then suddenly you've done it. And you're like, how did that happen? And it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think there's so much value in that, and it really can make the difference between never starting or having something that's unfinished and really just completing that goal and then being
Yes.
I can't imagine I will be an author someday, but
Yes.
I can't imagine how much so that could feel to have created this tangible thing like a book. I mean, that's
Yeah,
got to be really incredible. So, and something to be very proud of. So, I just think that that can make all of the difference. And I consistently see people who think they can do it on their own and kind of spin their wheels. And, honestly, I think we're all where we're supposed to be, but you can collapse time and make much more progress by finding somebody to help you achieve what you want to do.
for sure.
So,
Yeah.
so tell us, like, you know, let us know the name of your novels, where everybody can connect with you and find out more about what you do in your courses and all that good stuff.
Great. So they can go to Mary Adkins Writer, like so Adkins with a D, like dog, maryadkinswriter.com. And find out about my books there and my teaching. I have a YouTube channel where I teach. If they want to look for my name on YouTube, it should pop right up where I teach all kinds of writing strategies. And they'll also be able to link to my program called the Book Incubator, which is an application-based program. So you just have to apply. It's 2 questions. I just ask like what their book idea is and what kind of support they're looking for. So I make sure that it's a good fit. And then if they're accepted, I send them all kinds of information about the program and they can see if it's for them. So yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's been such a great conversation with so many little hidden gems and little gifts of information to apply to anybody who wants to achieve anything. So, thank you so much for sharing that experience and wisdom. And I just know so much value to the audience. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Angela. This was really fun. Thanks
Yeah, it
to
was.
everyone for listening.
Yes, thank you.
And that wraps up another enlightening episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast, the last one for November of 2023. We have one more month to go in season 2. I cannot wait to bring you season 3. So much goodness is coming. And I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Mary Adkins for sharing her incredible insights, wisdom, and a peek into her inspiring journey. If Mary's story resonated with you or sparked a new idea, we would love to hear from you. I will leave Mary's contact information in the show notes. You can connect with me at mombusinesscoach.com. Share your takeaways, thoughts, and any questions you might have. Don't be shy. Mary and I would both love to hear from you. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all striving to find that delicate balance between motherhood, entrepreneurship, and personal growth. Mary's story serves as a testament to the incredible things that can happen when we embrace our passions and pursue our dreams. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback really does mean the world to us, and it helps us discover the empowering stories we share on the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast.
Before I sign off, a special thank you to our listeners for being part of this supportive community. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with inspiration, practical advice, and the authentic stories of mompreneurs navigating the beautiful chaos of life. Until next time, remember, you are not just a mom, you are a powerhouse mompreneur, and you are more than good enough. Take care and keep chasing those dreams. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't wait to talk to you next time. Bye.